All right. So as part of the scaling of GitLab and the growing of the engineering and product teams, we're changing a little bit about how we do kickoff for each milestone, which is wonderful. So we're going to be just recording a meeting where we review items for this upcoming milestone, which is 12.3. This is not me doing a readout. This is not a perfectly choreographed call. This is more, here are the big ticket items that could be part of the panel discussion for the main kickoff call. Do we feel like there's enough information in there? Do we agree on scope? Do we agree on commitment? And at a future state, when we are fully staffed, this is also the time when we would go over designs for those. So I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to go through the things that I would deem the release post items, the things that contribute to incident management direction or other product categories that the health group might be working on. We are not going to go through every single bug or every single small improvement. An exception to that would be a P1 bug that everyone would be really excited about hearing about. But in general, just the big ticket items. Also interactive, not me doing a readout. So please ask questions. Okay. So here's our planning board. I have filtered it for 12.3, which I realize all it does is clear out the other columns because it's already organized by milestone. At the top of the milestone, I've put our larger ticket items. Everything else is underneath it. And we've got a bunch of MVCs as well as continuation on our Zoom integration. If you guys have looked at our vision page, these will populate there by the direction label. So when you look at the product vision under upcoming releases for 12.3, we're automatically populating this section. So you can see all of our plans showing up here on this public website. So it's my job to be maintaining this and making sure that this is up to date. All right. So continuing from 12.2, Peter did some excellent work doing research into how we want to authenticate Zoom accounts with GitLab, and we decided to use JWT authentication. Peter, do you want to talk to that real quick?
Yeah, I might be. I went ahead and tested JSON Web Tokens, and for the use cases we are anticipating it should work. So I don't see any blockers to prefer JSON Web Tokens over OAuth. So actually, last Friday I started the implementation of a very tiny and small client, Zoom client, in order to support some actions on the meetings. Most likely creating meetings and getting information for a specific meeting, which brings us a little bit closer to the /Zoom command in the near future, I guess. But again, that's just the beginning. Yeah.
Awesome. So just to tie everybody in who hasn't been part of the maturity of this particular feature, we're integrating GitLab with Zoom to bring users who are trying to resolve incidents during a firefight within GitLab closer to starting a meeting, having people join the meeting, providing them more information about how long the meeting's been going on, how many people are in there, making it easier to start and end Zoom meetings from the incident itself, which is an issue within GitLab. So one of the first steps in doing that is authenticating both products so that we have access to information about the call via Zoom's API. Additionally, this feature is also going to be used by people outside of the ops section. So we are building it for our intended users, which you can see the personas listed here. But everyone who uses Issues and who uses Zoom as a conference platform within their company will be able to leverage this. So we're going to be following the same integration pattern that other services that integrate with GitLab follow. Amelia put together the designs that you see attached here. Yes. Does anybody have any questions on this before we move on?
I have one question, and I'm sorry, there's like insanely loud construction going on outside, so you might hear that. But as part of this, just the Zoom API integration issue, Peter and I had talked about briefly having some small aspect that shows that it's actually working, like being able to pull back the information to, for a call or a list of calls or something. And I think it's worth discussing whether we want to include some little piece of functionality like that so that it's not just an integration that goes to nowhere, which also could be okay, if we're saying we're following it up with this and this and this, or if we want to include some very, very like small MVC part of pulling back something from Zoom.
I love that, because then that can also be how we showcase it both on the release post and test it. So we could do something along the lines of adding how long the call's been going in the button, how many people are part of the call. What do you guys think? Are both of those viable options?
I think for now, like just showing the status of the Zoom call would be easy enough. Other stuff like showing how many participant has been on the call involves a little bit more API calls, I guess. But we could easily, again, just show if the latest Zoom we linked into the issue description is still going on or finished or is in the waiting stage.
Awesome. So I love that. Would we want to do that in the button? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that would be, I am not sure. I think this would also involve some front-end work.
Yeah. I think we'd want to include a front-end engineer. Hopefully it would be very, very light front-end work, but I think we'd want to do that. The only other thing that I'd, make sure I want to raise is the possibility of sort of, expanding the scope of this and making it, I guess, slightly riskier to finish in time.
Is it possible to separate issues instead of adding more scope to this more of an iteration issue? Would anyone be opposed to that?
I am always in favor of that. And then we can plan on doing them together to have a visual way to see a small result of the integration. But if we don't get to it, we still have the integration, and we can do that in 12.3. Excellent.
Yep, I like that.
Wonderful. Okay. So I'm going to remove that from the scope of this guy. I'm going to leave this one the same, and we'll get another issue spun up for that. Clement, would you mind starting that? And I'm happy to contribute to and totally populate the description of that issue.
Yep. And so the recap is to add when the call is a status. Is that correct? Yes,
and I believe that's active, waiting, ended, but we will confirm.
Okay.
All right. I'd also like to add that this is an excellent example of something that engineering and UX can continue to collaborate on during the milestone, and that we've done our work to prepare something 70% from the user experience side, and then we'll continue to shift gears as we learn new things. So I love that. Thanks, guys. All right. Next one. So I changed the name of this particular issue, and I'll start from a high level for those who were not familiar with this one. It used to say Slack integration for incident management, and I've changed it to say Slack chat ops for incident management MVC for a couple reasons. One, chat ops via Slack is already a feature that exists within GitLab that is owned by the configure stage. We are adding to it, augmenting it to support the operations personas that we're serving with this. And we are adding to the chat ops feature using the Slack product. So in the future, I know we have a Mattermost integration. or we could potentially choose to add more from a chat-ups perspective using other products. So I wanted to be clear that this was existing. This is the known chat-ups feature using the Slack product, and we are changing it or adding to it for incident management. So we've found, both in my prior experience and through a ton of conversations that Amelia and I have had with our customers, that majority of everybody is using Slack as a chat tool to collaborate during the firefight. So we want to close the gap between GitLab and Slack, develop a set of functionality that makes it really easy and intuitive for people to do things such as create, update, close issues, add comments, share knowledge, share metrics to the issue while operating in Slack, which is where they do most of their work. So the MVC for this particular feature, and we're going to iterate on this in future milestones, is going to be essentially enabling the workflow where an issue has automatically been created in GitLab from a triggered alert, and we are sending this issue to Slack. So that configuration already exists. Once the issue is in Slack and people have collaborated on it, we are adding a / command which allows you to close the issue in GitLab. So completing that collaboration cycle, we allow you to get the issue into Slack, and we're going to allow you to close it in GitLab to minimize that context switching. So it's really simple. It's the boring solution to this particular workflow. At the end of that, we're going to be posting system messages to the issue within GitLab saying the issue was resolved. And then within Slack, this is an optional part of the scope, depending on how difficult we find the MVC. Posting a system message to the threaded discussion within Slack that says this issue has been resolved, so that individuals who are working on either platform have the same context. Questions, concerns, thoughts, and opinions? I'm going to take that as this is pretty straightforward. To follow on that, Erin, Amelia, and I are doing a little bit of divergent thinking this month, where we're laying out what the integration between GitLab, Slack, and Zoom looks like, and kind of how all of those products are going to work together as they are frequently used together during a firefight. And we want to make that experience really streamlined. So we've got an MVC for this. We're just at the point where we're authenticating Zoom and starting to add new features to that one. We want to make sure we have a good direction for that. So we'll keep everybody apprised. Right. Next MVC. Awesome. In recent discussions with enterprise customers and our internal infrastructure team, all of whom are using Prometheus monitoring and who are using Grafana for metrics visualizations, we recently built, or are almost done with, the ability to embed metrics charts from the GitLab metrics dashboard in issues, and we want to mirror that same functionality for Grafana. Grafana is currently more heavily used and far more featured than our metrics dashboard. At some point in the future, in support of our single application view for the DevOps lifecycle, our dashboard may be there. But for the time being, we need to meet people where they are working and support them in products that they are actively using during the firefight. So scope of this issue is being able to copy, link a Grafana metrics chart from that product into a GitLab issue. And I think future iterations of this will be both a real-time chart that shows how the problem is progressing, but also a static one that keeps you oriented to the problem at hand. Seth, I think that you posted a comment on here earlier. Did you get an answer to that, or was that more we just need a spike on this?
I don't think I got an answer or was looking for an answer. I think it was mostly that we should have not even necessarily that we should have a spike on it, but I think just a small time-boxed investigation to make sure that we're not grossly underestimating the scope or anything.
Should that be before we start 12.3?
I think so, yeah. I think that if we can do it in the next week or so, that'd be ideal. And I believe that also in this conversation, I suggested that it should be led by a front-end engineer, and then Clement chimed in and said,
Yeah, Tristan said he was going to take a look at it.
Got a thumbs up from Tristan. Cool. Awesome. All right. This is another one that will follow the same design patterns that we used for embedding charts from the metrics dashboard. And then at the end, we'll do a design review with UX. Okay. Fantastic. Awesome. Generic alert endpoint MVC. So the premise for anybody who is not familiar with this one is very simply a REST endpoint that someone can send an alert to from any monitoring tool. Customers use a lot of different tools beyond Prometheus to monitor their stack. If you are a large company and you're coming to GitLab for the first time, you most certainly have a stack of monitoring tools that are not Prometheus. There may be situations where you are not looking to include Prometheus in your monitoring portfolio, and we want to enable people to be able to take advantage of incident management and not be prescriptive in the tool that they should use. So we need to consume alerts from other sources. REST endpoint, someone can just send a JSON payload to it, we consume it, and we generate an issue with that payload from that message. I'm proposing that we have a block at the top of those issues, similar to the way that we create issues for Prometheus alerts. You're about to get a bunch of sirens. I live on a main street. Sorry about that. And so at the top for issues for Prometheus alerts, sorry, we show a title, starts at description, runbook. Peter, am I missing any other attributes that we include there?
I'm not sure about the attributes. I think these are fine. I was just thinking about authentication. So right now for Prometheus and Alert Manager, we do generate an bearer token on GitLab and configure the Alert Manager to send this token while sending an alert. And I think this we also have to consider for this generic endpoint, I feel.
do you think, can we use the same underlying thing? Can we use the same token and just allow other systems to send it?
So right now, the token for self-managed Prometheus installations lives in the service area, so project services, and it's the Prometheus service. And I'm not sure if the user would be confused to go to a Prometheus service in order to configure alerts for maybe a tool which is not Prometheus. So maybe creating a new service which should be fairly easy is good enough, but yeah, I'm not sure about this. Just raising the authentication issue, because I don't think we can allow folks without authentication poking some endpoints.
Yes, absolutely. Cool. I think this probably belongs in the open questions section, and I can add a comment to this issue.
Thought that we also had a call scheduled to talk about this, but I'm looking at my calendar and I am not seeing it. So the goal was to have a synchronous conversation about this at the end of the week. And I'll make sure that we have that scheduled. So could that be Peter, Seth, Aaron, and I? Would anyone else like to be a part of that for the initial kickoff to make sure we're ready to go on this one?
I would also like to join.
Amelia, awesome. I'll add you as well. Excellent. All right, guys. Those are our direction items for 12/3. Seth and Clement, did we decide what day 12/3 starts?
Well, we're just going to say the 16th.
Yep.
So for the rest of the team, the milestone dates are still a little bit confusing because there's still a lot of conversation about what it should be since we've moved to CD. So for the sake of being on the same page for our team, we're just going to, in our team internally, determine that 16th is the day when the new milestone will start, even though technically you may have until the 18th to merge for that release, and technically the kickoff call about product is like around the 7th. So just want to make sure everyone is clear on that so that we're on the same page when we're talking about work and different milestones.
Awesome. Well, that is it. Thank you so much for attending this impromptu call, especially to those for whom this is outside of their working hours. I really appreciate it. For milestones in the future, we'll be doing a recorded kickoff call every month. I think it'll be nice to align the team. Yeah, have a wonderful Tuesday or Tuesday evening.
Bye, Cynthia.